Hey Michael, what's up?
What is going on, my sister? How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. You and I have been rocking and rolling now for 2 weeks straight with summer youth employment, and
Yes, we
today's
have.
the first day where it feels like we're okay. I think we're going to be okay.
Yes, I agree. How was your weekend?
It was pretty good. It was pretty good. I got a really good long run in yesterday, and while I was out there, there was this thing happened, and it was I was running on Lambert's Lane, and so I'm starting to rock. So I'm stopping myself because I don't want Adam, our producer, to get all bent out of shape about it. So I'm not moving. I'm stopping right now. So I'm running on Lambert's Lane, and I am thinking to myself, how do I do it, man? How do I like do more for the universe? How do I put out more love and more understanding? And how do I help people and get them to connect to each other and believe that we could all do this together and we could like fight the vitriol and start speaking to each other more kindly? And how do I get more kindness out there? How can I do this? How can I do this? And I turn off of Lambert's Lane, like down at the bottom of South Avenue, and there's this long, like stretch of wetland or of the green belt, And I run this road like probably 5 times a week, and I get like halfway down the road, and there's a stone that's been turned up, and on the face of the stone, someone wrote kindness. And I'm
Wow.
like, what is even going on right now? Here I am. I'm putting it out into the universe. That's meta reality right there for you. That's an example of meta reality. I'm putting it out there, and then wham! It
Wow.
just. So I got so excited. I was running by it, and I was like, I can't let this moment pass. So I actually got on. I actually took out my phone and I did like this whole 2 minute video about what had just happened, and then I ended it with the little spot of the stone with the word kindness on it. So my Sunday was pretty cool, man. It was pretty cool. How was yours?
My weekend was good. My fiance and I, we like to drive around Staten Island and get lost, but how lost can you really get on Staten Island? We discovered the Alice Austin house. I had never been there up until this weekend. And there's this like little bench by the beach area, I guess you can call it. And it is the most serene area in the whole park. You're just sitting there, you're looking out on the water, you can see Brooklyn, you can see the Verrazano. And I think we must have sat there for about 2.5 hours. And it seemed like time passed by super quickly because it was just calming and amazing and the views and stuff like that. So I think I found my new secret spot. It's not so secret, it's just secret to me. But I found my new spot that I'm going to go to.
Indeed, that is a treasure of Staten Island. That whole area
Hmm.
there that they're turning into a bike path,
Hmm.
and there's a number of advocates on Staten Island that are working on making sure that that actually does happen. And NICED has been working with the Alice Austin House for a number of years because our young people have done a boot camp each year, and we usually go there as part of a scavenger hunt. And just a stone's throw from there, like literally almost, like maybe not me, and I'm sure there are people that can throw a stone on Fort Wadsworth. Speaking of favorite places on Staten Island, one of my most favorite places in the planet is on the planet, in the planet, is you can stand under the Verrazano Bridge. There's an area on the fort where you can literally just stand under the bridge and look up. And I do this, I run through there and I do this, and I stand and I look up and I think to myself, like, if we could do this, if we could build this thing like in 1961 and 62 and 63, like we could do anything. We could
Hmm.
solve any problem that the universe or that universe throws at us, that man makes that we need to undo. We can absolutely solve any problem if we can build something like this. It's so cool. It's such like it's this hollow sound. You can kind of hear the cars and you kind of can't. It just feels like you're on a spaceship. There's like a hum. It's the coolest thing, man. It's the coolest thing.
That's awesome. I love how many hidden gems there are around the island.
Yeah,
So yeah.
absolutely. So speaking of like saving the world, our our next guest today, or the guest of today, is Nidhi Khanna, and she is like the heroine of Staten Island. She is a absolute incredible human being. There's so much about Nidhi that there's only almost like there's probably like not enough time in our intro to actually name all of the things that she's done, from working on Obama's first election campaign as a volunteer, to and was helping out with the Affordable Care Act, to working on his reelection, to
Mhm.
working on climate, uh, and working with Al Gore's The Climate Reality Project. She's a Sierra Club person. Sierra Club helps build a world that is just, equitable, and sustainable. She has been advocating for women's equality issues, LGBTQIA issues, economic equality. She's like incredible. Like I can't even. There's so many things. She was instrumental in helping uh, New York Assemblyman Matt Tatone become a surrogate judge. She He's the first openly gay surrogate judge on Staten Island. Just so many things. She is well researched. She has a bachelor's in biology uh, and philosophy from Wagner College. She has an MS in environmental science. I mean, like, talk about somebody who is going to help us solve the world's greatest problems. I have such a near and dear place in my heart for Nidhi, because she helped me out a number of years ago when I was trying to do more good in our community, and had just proven herself to be someone with a boundless well of energy, an incredible compassion for people, and just like a magnet of good, like a magnet of good. And that's what we need. We need more magnets of good.
Good people attract good people. So I, for one, am excited to talk to her. I love science. I also minored in biology in college. So I'm looking forward to talking, science things with her, and also talking about saving the world because, you know, that's what we have to do at the end of the day. So without further ado, let's get into this conversation, shall we?
Let's do it. Let's welcome Miss Nidhi Khanna.
Awesome.
Whoever wants to make change in their community can be empowered to do so.
Very often, folks will vote based upon that one thing.
So warming for little girls of color to see themselves being represented.
It is possible to try to move someone who is completely on the opposite sector.
Would you be able to define intersectionality?
How do you get to a place where you can actually start having that conversation?
We are back again for another episode of Effective Expressions. How's everybody doing today?
I'm shaking it off, man. We just got done doing the SYEP dance for the week and finishing up entering all the young people's payroll, and so that they can get paid on Friday. So I'm like shaking. I'm good
Yeah,
though.
yeah, same here. I'm just like smiling and nodding, like everything's fine, nothing's on
As
fire,
you
don't worry.
know, don't mind this.
Yes.
And here we are with Miss Nidhi Khanna. Hello, how are you, my sister?
Hey everyone, it's good to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
We are so excited to have you here today. And I was sharing with you that when we were starting to lay out who we felt we could talk to, who's on the ground, who has such a clear understanding of all of the challenges that we are facing as an island, as a country, as a planet, and wham! It was your face was in my mind's eye, and I was like, we're totally gonna get to Nidhi, and here you are, the third episode. Is it the third episode? Fourth episode.
Fourth episode.
And yes, and we have you here. So tell us, Miss Nidhi, how are you today? Generally, check in with us. How's your spirit, sister?
Doing great. It's been a very exciting day. I know we're just talking about Vice President Biden had announced that Kamala Harris would be his VP pick. So it's pretty exciting to see that you're going to finally have a woman of color on top of the ticket. Especially work that I do. I work in politics, so it's cool to see that history may be made in November.
Great,
Good.
great, great. Indeed, indeed. I'm excited to see that.
Same here. I think it's awesome to have good representation in the media, in the White House, and stuff like that. I just watched this video of a little Asian girl, Asian American girl, watching Hamilton, and she saw uh, what is her name? The one that plays Eliza. And she said, "Mommy, look, it's me, it's me, it's me." And it's just so warming for little girls of color to see themselves being represented. So I'm really excited that Kamala Harris is in the running and you know is really doing it. So
Absolutely. So, Nidhi, you are involved in so many things. We were talking and we were saying like, how do you actually fit it in one day? And just give us like a general, entree to the number of different things that you're currently working on. And we have all sorts of questions for you. But let's just tell our listeners, what you're up to right now. How you're plugging in to the political scene, to the climate scene, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I often at times feel like there's not enough hours in the day. I'm always spinning around doing multiple things. I do wear many different hats. Sometimes I feel like I wear too many hats. So during my full-time job, I work in the digital department for the Sierra Club. So that's where my environmental activism and advocacy work happens. And what I do at the Sierra Club is I work for the Beyond Coal campaign, which is working to shut down coal plants and across the country and move from coal to clean energy across all the states in the United States. And so there's a lot of issue advocacy work that's being done there at the state and local level, which is really exciting to see what's happening across the country and how we're approaching this issue at a federal level, at a state level, um, and what have you. And in Staten Island, I'm also very involved in the local political scene and advocacy scene. I spend my time volunteering with groups like the Young Democrats. I've been working on different electoral campaigns in Staten Island. Most recently, we worked on Matt Tatone's campaign for Mortgage. Also worked for United Activities Unlimited recently to be a census manager to help get the count out in hard to count areas in Staten Island. Groups like NICEAD were also CCF grantees through this initiative, and we had a great coalition. It was so great to see so many different groups working together to make sure our count was high. I think till this day, Staten Island does have the highest census response rate across the city, which is really cool. So it's always nice to see that when we work together, we can get a lot of great things done for our community.
so what inspired you to take this path?
I would say in 2008, there was a candidate that was running for president that kind of got me inspired. And, he said that anybody can get involved in government, anybody can make the change that they wish to seek. And I didn't think political advocacy or issue advocacy was for me. I was actually working as a scientific researcher at the time, but I noticed that there was a gap between the folks that were doing the research and the folks that were trying to make the policy. The people that were doing the research couldn't convey those messages and what needed to be done at the local level. So I thought, this is a great way to kind of combine my interests. And then I started to get involved more in volunteering at a local level in politics, and then also at a city-wide level and working for different candidates. And I realized this is something that anybody can be part of. You don't have to have a government background. You don't have to have a political science background. It's really whoever wants to make change in their community can be empowered to do so.
Be the change that you want to see in the world, right?
Yeah.
So you're mentioning a couple of things here that I just want to like bring to the surface. I want to pick your brain and I want to hear you tell us how we're gonna just deal with all this. talking about issues and related to, speaking related to coal, and how, there's a singular campaign that's about one issue. And yet that's something that's sort of contained inside all of these other things that are happening. And very often, we know that folks will vote based upon that one thing, based upon what that one thing that the candidate says, and candidates spend a lot of time, sort of singularly focused on the little language that they can, squeak out in a particular space, that's going to get somebody to vote for them. Um, how how do you balance that commitment that you make, um, to just like give all of your time and your effort and your energy with the pressure that campaigns get under, when you have to sort of figure out what the language is, what's the message, and how do you stay true to your values in the process?
That's a great question. And it's something I think if you work in the issue sphere or electoral sphere, it's something all of us grapple with. There are times I know there are single issue voters will say, like, if this candidate or this policymaker doesn't move on this issue, I will not support them. I will not vote for them. And I feel like at times, we all have our ideologies, but it's really important to find those folks that you can move. And there may not be people that are perfect that align with you exactly, but you need to find a way to I think it's more important to get your foot in the door and try to make room at that table so that way you can make those changes and implement that policy that you want to see, because it is possible to try to move someone who is completely on the opposite sector. We kind of did this in this district right after 2017. The Affordable Care Act was going to be repealed, and many constituents were saying, this is something that I really care about. I had pre-existing conditions. I was protected under the Affordable Care Act. I'm under 26 years old. I was able to stay under my family's insurance, and to have that be taken away was a real thing. And people took action, and then encouraged across the country. You saw people are telling their legislators, please don't vote against this. So those people, I don't think were only concerned about those issues. There were other issues that were probably important to them, but this was very real. And I think that's something we have to just keep in mind, that a lot of these issues are intersectional. Like, if you're fighting for immigration rights, you can also be fighting for climate justice. If you're fighting for Black Lives Matter, you can also be supporting women's rights. And all these things come together. And instead of being siloed, we should all really come together in that struggle, because there is so much there is more power in numbers. So there are times where, I don't necessarily agree entirely with the policy or, a candidate, but then I hearing the messaging on the ground, that helps you alter that message while you're in real time, which is really great. Hear what people have to say, what their concerns are, and then you tell the candidate, maybe you should shift to this issue, or maybe this is not something, this is not the way you should frame that message. So I think it's really important to remind folks that, there's not going to be a perfect legislator, there's not going to be a perfect candidate. None of us are perfect ourselves, and we got to find but then also try to push for what we truly believe in. And that's what I kind of try to do. I know I tend to be very idealistic, but then I know at the end of the day, I got to find space and make that space and ensure that, I'm also empowering others to make that change as well and open the door for others to be part of the movement.
Absolutely. Would you be able to define intersectionality for people that might not know what it is?
Yeah, sure. So I think and the easiest way to say it is that all these issues and different identities would come together, and you're kind of using those. different frameworks to work around an issue. It's not just like everything is working in silos. If you're fighting for environmental justice, is directly tied to Black Lives Matter and how immigrant rights are impacted by environmental justice issues. Or if you're talking about raising the minimum wage, that is directly impacted to women's rights and how many a time women are not paid equally to men. And so all these things, I think, come together, and we should be more mindful of it, and then also work together instead of being in those silos, because there's so much more we can do when we are in greater numbers.
Absolutely.
So it really is like helping people understand when you're in the field, when you're doing your work, it really is helping people understand that there's a place for them at that table that you were talking about. And what I think that gets lost on a lot of voters is the political process is one where you may go in with like a whole loaf of bread, and you're like, this is my loaf of bread, and I'm keeping this loaf of bread because I need it for everyone over here. And you go into the meeting where others have to, they're going to go back, you're going to go back and forth on a particular issue, and then what happens is you start slicing off loaves piece of that bread, and then maybe you come out of the room with half the loaf. And I'm bringing this up for you because I'd love to pick your brain and have you help us share with community members that there is a place for you. And so I wonder, how do you, when you're in the field, when you're talking to folks about these issues, um, and you're trying to help them understand that they need to take some sort of action, even if it's only just to vote. And we all know that it can't just be about that. Like, we need you to participate in the democracy, and help us help others to understand how important that is. How do you get to a place where you can actually start having that conversation when you're like, you've just knocked on somebody's door and they don't even want to answer the door?
And that's always a challenge. And even though I've been doing this for years, I'm learning things every day. When you talk to people, there's many folks that you'll talk to, young folks, older folks will say, like, my vote doesn't matter. Who cares? They're all the same anyway. And I like to start the conversation and say, well, it's not that way. Your voice does matter. If you go to this elected official and say, this is an issue that's important to me and I'm concerned about my community's needs, they're going to listen, because you have to hold your elected officials accountable. And I think that's something we all forget. People think, well, they're so removed. And I think many people, because they're not familiar with the process, they don't realize that they do have more power in their voice, in their actions. And these elected officials are accessible. You are able to make a phone call and schedule an appointment to talk about an important issue. Your vote does matter. We saw over the years, many elections were determined by a small percentage of the vote. And especially those local elections are extremely important. Presidential elections, of course, are important. They happen every 4 years, but you do see a dip over midterm elections. And people forget that, races like DAs, judges, those are the people that are going to determine your everyday issues, and I think reminding folks that many of these, like, term limits, even you see in Staten Island, to run for civil court judge, that's a 10-year term. To run for surrogate judge, that's 14 years. You don't have 2 years to vote someone out if you're not happy with the person that's in that seat. And so that's something, I like to remind folks that, your voice does matter, and these local issues will impact you. And the people that you're going to have to go to are everyday people that you may know already. Especially in Staten Island, you'll see people are they don't generally, I think, vote all the time by a specific party. They vote for the person. If people see you out there working hard, I think that will make a real difference. And then I also feel that, making that personal story and connecting to the voter, that's really going to make the difference. If you go out there, you're volunteer knocking on someone's door, a person's going to say, well, this is not a staffer who's getting paid to do this. They're here on their own will. This person must care about the issues. This person that they're back backing must be important. I think that's something campaigns really need to use. Have those volunteers out there, making sure people share their personal story, because we all have issues that matter to us. If you're a teacher, education might be the most important issue to you. If you're a nurse or a hospital worker right now on the front lines battling COVID, healthcare is important, PPE is important. And we need to know that, those elected officials and policymakers are not so removed, and they are impacting those everyday decisions that are important to us. So I think honing that personal story will really help you get your foot in the door. There will always be people who be like, I don't want to engage, I don't care, my vote doesn't matter. But I always remind folks not to get discouraged, because even if you knock on one door and the person says, yeah, you know what, because you knocked on my door, because you reminded me to vote, I'm going to go do it. It's one of the greatest feelings in the world. And, if you can do that, that person can feel empowered. A lot of times people are afraid to go on to a campaign or even volunteer for a campaign because they're not asked. And if you're asked by just a regular person or a friend, they're going to feel valued, and they're going to feel like they have buy-in. And that's going to, I think, help those folks become not just voters, but active members in their community.
I totally agree. I really think that once we can convince everyone that there is a seat at the table for you, we can really change this country and change the world, but we can only do that one person at a time. So tell me, is there anything that you're currently working on that you are particularly excited about?
Yeah, so I'm also a board member of a volunteer group called, actually two volunteer groups. One is specifically working to uplift the voice candidates and issues of South Asians across the country. And the work that we do is, especially during electoral year, is help those South Asian candidates at the very local level to like congressional level or Senate level. And it's really exciting to see many of those candidates. It's running for office. I'm seeing more and more people of color, and especially from the South Asian community, actually taking that step. Usually, running for office or public service is not something that's common in the South Asian community. We're very stereotyped into jobs like engineers or doctors or lawyers or something like that. But there are these other avenues, and I think it's great for other folks to see that, because they're having that representation means that more people can say, you know what, maybe that's a path that I want to take. So that's some work that I'm really excited to do. We've endorsed many candidates, and we're going to be coordinating with them all over across the country. So that's something I'm really excited about. And I'm also working, as we all know, that I'm doing a lot of work, political work, in a volunteer affinity group with the Biden campaign called South Asians for Biden. And where the South Asian voting bloc seems to be very important this year, not just because of the VP pick, but generally South Asians do tend to vote, but not in large, as massive numbers as other populations and minority groups. So, I've even seen the National Party invest TV ads in different South Asian languages, and we're even creating different translated materials so that we in different Indian, Bangladeshi, Urdu, Bengali languages. So this is particularly exciting because a lot of our folks in our community are on different digital media platforms like WhatsApp, and we can get that message out there. And because of COVID, we have to get a little creative because we can't do that traditional campaigning of knocking on doors. We got to rely heavily on digital media, TV media, just word to word, getting the word out. So these are some like projects that kind of working on the side as a volunteer, and it's exciting things. Everything's changing every day, but it'll be interesting to see what happens.
That sounds awesome.
You just said like a bazillion things I want to ask you about. And so I'm going to try to formulate a focus question here. One of the things that you mentioned was reaching people, and so something simple like, well, just having an ad in a particular language would reach more people. And I guess I'm curious, from your perspective, that we're in a place because of COVID, where virtually nothing can get done at the rate and the pace that is required to actually get out the vote. to actually rock a vote, and we're it's being this is occurring in a time, I think, in our just humanity is the only way that I think I can really describe it, where the vitriol and the hate and the divisiveness on social media is like reaching new heights, new fever pitches and peaks every single day. And on one hand, the you have the just the nature of people not being informed, and then on the other hand, you actually have a machine that's driving the divisiveness, across the globe. And here, you are, trying to get a crisp, clean message across that reaches people. How do we contend with that? How do we help people, like, give them the information that they need, and have them trust that information? What do we have to do to actually make that connection?
That's an amazing question, and I'm glad you asked it because one of the things that most campaigns tell you, whether it's issue or advocacy, is that you need to have trusted messengers in the community. And I think that really makes the difference. Even the work that I'm doing with specifically targeted communities, because I am South Asian, another South Asian person may feel more comfortable when I pick up the phone and say, and I can pronounce their name. They feel like somebody's caring about them. They made that effort to actually acknowledge who they are, and I'm not just a vote. And so that's something even locally, you'll see that in Staten Island. People, there are many influencers, and people think you have to be an elected official or a famous person to be an influencer. You can be an influencer if you're a reverend at a church. You can be an influencer if you're a teacher in your community. People trust. If you build trust within your community, people will listen and acknowledge what you have to say. And I think that's something we can do to fight all that vitriol that's out there. Having more of those community messengers and trusted allies say that, what, your voice matters. Forget about what the other side is saying. We need to make sure that we stand together in numbers. And in this case, get out the vote. Make sure you tell your friend, tell one friend, tell two friend. Your vote matters. And be be each other's news. If you find something out, confirm it, check your resources, but tell your friends. There's a lot of information out there. Sometimes there's information overload, but because you're a trusted messenger in your community, or in even your circle of friends, I think that will make a huge difference. And generally it seems to be the case.
How do we help people get past that fear of, I don't want to ask my aunt how she feels about, Kamala Harris and whether or not she'll vote in this next election, because I don't want to be that person in the family. How do we help people find that courage? Like that courage, like I've seen you walk through neighborhoods. You're like a lioness, man. You're like just going up the street, like knocking on every single door. And you're just amazing. And I've seen you in action, just with such compassion and love in your heart, and like fearlessness around, there's a really good chance that the person on the other side of this door is absolutely going to disagree with me. And even worse, that I don't even know them. And then, sometimes you could argue that it's easier to talk to a stranger. And yet I think that what I'm witnessing, and I'm so concerned about as we go into this next like election cycle, that will literally, like, in my opinion, sort of define the rest of our country's history. How do we help people find that courage, connect to something that says, I have to do this?
Yeah, I think this year especially, this is probably one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime. And it's definitely hard. I mean, I've been doing this for years, but knocking on strangers' doors and building up that courage to say, hey, vote for my person. It's still frightening. I still get jitters. And I'm like, this person's going to slam the door on me. I don't want to offend them. Am I bothering them during dinner time? All these things still come through my head. But I think at the end of the day, I think that moves me forward is that if I'm not out there, who will be? You know, I got to be out there. We all got to be out there and make sure that we do our civic duty. Voting is important, and if you are able to participate and have the time and have the capacity, it's something I encourage everybody to do. But getting over that fear, I think once you do it, and then once you get that voter that says, "Hey, you came to my door, and because what you said inspired me, and I'm gonna consider voting," that makes the whole a whole lot of difference. Even with family members, I know it's hard. You know, you're thinking, if I tell Aunt Jane that, you know, I'm voting for a certain person, or if I ask her, you know, I don't agree with you, she's never going to speak to me again. Those are very difficult conversations. And I'm not saying everybody has to have them. You don't have to have those uncomfortable conversations. If you feel better, you know, going through your phone and asking those three people that you think are, you know, similar
Mhm.
ideologies of like you and will probably vote, but maybe, you know, need a little bit of nudge, reach out to them instead. But I think you can also have that important dialogue with your relatives or family and friends. It may be uncomfortable, but I think if we do it in a way where, you know, we're not saying like this person's a monster, this person is, you know, just because you don't agree with me, you're a horrible person. Trying to find a common ground, seeing what issues are important to them. You know, if there's something, you know, if Aunt Jane cares about um, the Second Amendment. Tell her what it's like if you're a teacher to be, you know, with that responsibility of protecting your kids if there's an active shooter on campus. Or if she's a nurse, tell her how healthcare is important to you. What are things that matter to her? And I think if you find that common ground, there could be some similarities, and maybe you can persuade that person to come to your side. Maybe not, but I think those having that important dialogue is always important. And sometimes you will be surprised. I remember many years ago when I was a researcher, I looked at the impacts of Hurricane Sandy on Staten Island and spoke to many folks who were impacted by the storm. And one of the questions that I had was, do you believe in climate change? And I noticed I was talking to people, the word climate change didn't sit with easy with them. Some of them said, well, that's a political term, that's a political hoax. So then as I was talking to people, I changed my question. I said, you know what? Do you think something like Sandy can happen again? And I was surprised because the reasoning that they gave me was pretty much the exact definition of what climate change is, but I just changed the terminology. So sometimes you just got to change the words to get that person to that point. And many folks were then saying, you know what? I don't think we should be building in areas that our wetlands. You know, this shouldn't have happened. We could have done this. You know, we need to do better to tackle this issue. So I think just finding that common ground and just talking to people, you'll be surprised. There's ways to get creative. You know, before people agreed with marriage equality. We didn't use the word marriage equality. You know, people had issues with the way gay rights was termed. You know, by going to marriage equality, people were like, yes, everybody needs to be equal. And I think, you know, finding that messaging sometimes will just can help move the needle in ways that you never thought before.
I think it's all about connotations of a word. You know, if you say someone is skinny, it has a negative connotations. But if you say, "Oh, girl, you look slender today," it's a compliment. You know, so I think it's really important when you're talking to potential voters and stuff like that. There's certain connotations of words to really get your point across. And I love the attitude of, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? I think that's super important, especially now. So let me ask you, what are you seeing on the ground as the election is ramping up?
So I'm seeing a lot of folks are getting excited. I think people are ready to cast their ballots. I know there's a lot of uncertainty because we don't know what mail-in voting is going to look like. I know in New York we did do a trial with mail-in voting during the primary, it didn't go so well. So I know there's a lot of people are nervous, people are can't wait for November. People are worrying what's going to happen on the 11th hour. So there's a lot of things we're going to have to probably troubleshoot in real time, but it should be a very, I think, historic and something we've never seen election before. We've never been in a situation where most of the country will be mailing in their ballots and also voting in person if it's safely possible.
Hmm.
So speaking of language, we have our fun little surveys, and we've been using them here, there, and everywhere to bring community to um, our beautiful little podcast. As we start off, we're like the little engine that could hear at, at effective expressions. Um, so we had asked, we had asked you to take the survey. And I guess we'd like to frame it. So the love language survey is. I'm going to let Robin explain it actually because she's much better at it than I am. Um, I'm curious how your the results of the survey and also what is happening on like so many levels, because it really does feel like everything is just getting more and more compounded. And we really think about intersectionality, it's like, well, of course it's all interrelated. Like, how could you not recognize the fact that, if we can't get people to the voting, or the fact that if we can't find a vaccine, we can't get people to vote. So as an example, how is all of this affecting like your personal life? How are you surviving all of this? And then Robin, like, just give us the frame around the love languages again, so our listeners can hear it up.
So, your love language is how you express and receive love. So, there are five love languages. You have quality time, words of affirmation, receiving gifts, physical touch, and acts of service. And just to give a little snippet, quality time is spending time with the person. uh, Acts of service is actually doing something for someone. I made you a sandwich instead of I bought you a sandwich. Receiving gifts is I bought you a sandwich instead of I made you a sandwich. What am I missing? Words of affirmation is telling someone what a good job they're doing, just affirming them and really like pouring positivity into them. And I am missing one.
Physical touch.
Physical touch is self-explanatory. It's, yeah.
I'm gonna I'm gonna wrap you up like a sandwich.
Yes. um, so I first of all, I kind of wanted to guess what your love language is. And I want to say it's either acts of service or quality time, because I feel like you put a lot of time and effort into your uh the things that you're passionate about. But whatever your love language is, I want to know how it relates to the work that you do, and the method of the work that you do. So there's two questions: is how is everything affecting your personal life, which is what Michael asked, and then what your love language is and how it relates to your platform.
Um, so my personal life, I don't really have one. I I often, as I say, I wear too many hats. Sometimes I feel like the hats just keep coming, and there are times where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take a break, I'm gonna step away, but it's this work that just keeps me going, knowing that something I did help someone else makes it all worthwhile. And it's so hard for me to step away. I do a lot of organizing in the community just as a volunteer. I'm not getting paid to do it, but it's great for me to see more folks getting empowered and taking those actions. And if I can be a resource or a mentor to make that happen, I feel like it's worthwhile. So I definitely don't do a good job with self-care. I'm not the person you should be asking for tips, but it does, I think, overtake my personal life. But there are times where I'm actually okay with it. I don't see myself doing anything else, and there's so many times I told myself I'm going to stop organizing. I'm going to do something completely different. I'm going to maybe travel the world or something like that. But I know at the end of the day, I can't take a day off from it. It's just something I love to do, and I hope to continue to be able to do it as long as I can. And for the second question, you did guess correct. Quality time is my
Yay.
yeah. I think what mainly because I don't have a lot of time, and for me, if someone is taking that time to um, be around me and I think about me, I think that, does tell me that this person actually does care. And that's the way I express my care for other folks as well. If I'm taking the time, even though I'm crazy busy at times, there's often days where I'm like, don't know what day it is, especially with COVID, don't know what time it is. But if I am able to make time for someone, I think people do appreciate it because, there's, even just saying hello to someone that you haven't spoken to in a while, just making them know that you think about them and took the time to do it out of their day, I think is really important and can make someone feel loved and appreciated.
How do you think your love language affects how you work?
I think it kind of is the basis of my work. A lot of the mentoring that I do or volunteering that I do, I make sure I know a lot of times I have like 3 meetings scheduled at a time or I have to, squeeze people in, but I want to make sure I have that time for folks and I know that they feel appreciated and they're getting something out of whatever they're asking me, whether it's learning how to organize or, helping someone go over their resume. I want to make sure I can help folks and feel that they can get a leg up because I feel like often at times when I was navigating the world, I didn't know who to ask for help. I didn't know where to go, and I often felt lost. And if I can do that for someone else and make sure they can get a leg up and have those opportunities that I didn't have, I think that's super important. And that's kind of how I usually just spend my time. If I can help anyone or I always tell folks like if you ever need anything feel free to reach out, and I'm not just saying that, I really mean it. If someone wants to text me, I know sometimes maybe I'm too available. People text me at 1 a.m. Oh, hey, can you help me out with something, can you look over my paper or whatever, and I'm always happy to do it because at the end of the day, I feel like those folks trust me enough to ask me, and if I'm able to make them comfortable enough to ask, I think that's a great feeling, not just for me, but for them as well. And then they can feel empowered to do the same. I've seen so many folks that not only worked in the advocacy world, but even students I've taught, they went on to go do, they were much smarter than me, went on to do bigger and better things. But there are times they'll come back to me and say, because you took that quality time to invest in me and just make me feel like I was important or worth that to just spend that time and learn whatever you taught me. It made a huge difference. And I did that later on for someone else. So that's how I feel like it's often reflected in my work.
That's awesome. And I could totally feel that energy from you, that quality time, very detail oriented. And it speaks in the excellent work that you do. So,
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh wow. I have one more thing for you that I just sort of have been chomping at the bit because we really are committed to, giving platform to those that really are never given an opportunity to, reach a lot of people. I don't know that we're quite reaching a lot of people yet, and we're going to. We're thinking big here,
yes.
and I say I say that because I want you to just give us a sense of like if you could control one thing right now that could really just alter the whole state of affairs, you know, what would that one thing be? What would be, if it's an issue or if it's a person or whatever it is, what's the solution that you see that could totally help us get to go to into a better direction, head into a better direction?
That's a really good question. There's so many things I would want to say. I think because this is something that's really on my mind, I think a solution for us just going forward is making sure everybody goes out and expresses their right to vote this November. And, I think we won't get to a perfect world, but we'll get to a space where, people will not be persecuted for the religion that they practice. People will not be fearful for, expressing their minds. People won't feel like the color of their skin will determine their future, and people will be judging them or not giving them opportunities because of that. And so I think that's one thing we have to change. That I think that mindset that we matter, even at no nobody's small, everybody's important, and I think that will just be a huge solution to a lot of our current problems and state of affairs, because a lot of those issues that I talked about, climate justice, Black Lives Matter, women rights, gay rights, all those things are at stake at the ballot box this November. And I think that's one thing I hope everybody does and exercise. So one solution for our current state of affairs, I think, would be exercise your right to vote this November.
Mm. So that is really it right there.
Yeah.
We so appreciate you for taking the time to talk with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Go save the world, Nidhi. We're counting on you.
We're counting on you. Yes, I'm gonna bring you a cape with the big N on it.
Yep.
Indeed. It was such a pleasure, and we're with you, and we will see you out there soon. Anything else that you want to share? Is there anything that we missed? I don't even know. Anything you want to? You good?
Thank you both for allowing me to have this platform and inviting me to speak and share all the work I'm doing. It was great, and I love your podcast. I'm caught up on all the interviews, so I'm looking forward to seeing how big this gets.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
One person at a time.
Yes. One person at a time.
Great. Thank you so much. I love you, sister. Peace.
Thank you.
Take care.
Stay safe.
What a wonderful experience that was.
Do you see? I told you, she's amazing.
She is absolutely amazing, and I am totally counting on her to save the world. Nidhi, if you're still watching, no pressure. No pressure, but we are waiting on you.
I can't stop smiling when she's around. She's just really she fills me with energy, and it's amazing because she's so calm. And yet she just takes her time to get her point across, and it's like, yes, that's right, I'll follow you anywhere.
Exactly. She is so warm. She has that personality where it's like, yes, you're warm and fuzzy, so wherever it is that you want me to go, Nidhi, yes, I'm coming. Absolutely.
And truly, she was talking at the end there and said, if there's any one thing, and you could imagine that there were so many things that she could have said, and she chose to exercise your right to vote. And I heard something. This is not my original thought. I'm going to paraphrase it the way that at least it's ping-ponging around in my experience in this universe, is that our country was designed for there to be a revolution without people having to die. And that revolution is everybody can participate in it. And that revolution is at the ballot box. So go to the ballot box in November and participate in the revolution that is all of us voting. If we all do, then nobody at the end of the day can say, well, only 47% of the country votes, so this is not who really knows what's going on. Your vote this time around, next time around, for every time that you can make your way to the ballot box, whether you mail it in or you at some day text it in or you walk it in, you gotta vote. And to hear that message from somebody who has knocked on tens of thousands of doors is it's vital. So let us be one of those additional flags in the ground here, my sister, right now, that we, for the next, several months and every day thereafter, that we sing it.
Absolutely. I think that we, especially in this generation, have seen so much. We've seen the first Black president. We have seen a global pandemic. So why not be a part of the revolution? So get out and vote and make history. That seems to be what we're doing in this day and age.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. So if you're liking what you're hearing, you got to write us and you got to let us know, make some comments, like us on Facey Space, follow us on the Instagrammy. We're sort of on Tickety Talk yet. We haven't figured it all the way out yet, and we're tweeting all day long.
Oh
Or
Lord.
at least our main man Adam is tweeting all day long, and Robin and I are like helping young people have a fulfilling summer with the Summer Youth Employment Program, because that's our lot in life. And we are kicking it here every Wednesday. So join us. We are part of the revolution.
Yep.
We'll see you next week, Robin.
Take care.
Peace and love.